Barney, thanks so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. We've spent, I think, just over a year now together online with regards to training and endurance sport.
Yeah.
And now that Bahrain's on its way, I thought it would be a nice time to have you on the podcast, chat about, your life story, where you come from, and how you got into triathlons. I've been a hobbyist of the sport now for about a year and a half, and it's tough to let go.
Yeah, I think hobbyist is a bit unfair. You've went full hog into it.
Yeah. I'm kind of, sorry to interrupt, I'm kind of one of those guys, like, I'll buy all the gear and have no idea and then just find out, out later.
I think you've been pretty decent starting out.
Cheers.
I think athletes, though, say you coming on board because you have a background in the sport. I find that you kind of go a bit better than, say, someone who's been sedentary, they haven't done anything. So the fact you have a background in rugby, I think.
Yes.
That's much easier for me to coach than someone, say, coming on board with no previous training history. Even if it's like rugby is so far away from triathlon, but I think it's definitely helpful to have some link to team sports and stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think also just the setup of being consistent and knowing that you just need to do the work.
Yeah.
Like whether you enjoy it or whether you're looking forward to it or not, like it's there.
Yeah.
And I love even myself, like I've never really been that person that needs someone to be there in person every day to stay motivated. I just need a start. But the one thing which has been like monumental throughout like the whole process is the Friday rides.
Yeah.
Because like, especially when I decide, okay, I'm going to do a race, my first week's always trash. It's like, I just don't want to do it. Like, especially with the pool, I'm like, I just don't want to go in. And as soon as I hit that first Friday ride, I'm like, oh,
this is good.
Well, it starts off with like, oh, I'm so shit. I need to start training.
The group, that's a good thing and a challenge because I coach sort of, say, more beginner athletes and then now medium to, say, advanced. And the Friday ride is a bit tricky because each week everyone's getting faster.
Yeah.
It's getting a bit hard to then sort of cope with, say, beginner athletes and try and cater for them so they're getting something out of it. But yeah, definitely the Friday ride is something I look forward to every week. Yeah,
sure. It's a jolt of, I almost want to say like a reality check for me specifically. Like when it happens, especially that first week, I'm like, oh, I need to move. Like I need to put in the work. And the one thing about endurance sports is like you know if you haven't put in the hours because that's it.
It shows up. It's kind of weird because endurance sport, like say if you're in the gym context, someone's big, strong, they're pretty good. But sometimes you can have dark horses, guys that maybe don't look so fit, but man, they can still kill it on the bike or they're still really strong. I think it's because like endurance sport is almost like on a cellular level of fitness than say like physical. I don't know, it's hard to describe.
Yeah, aesthetics plays no role.
Yeah, some dark horses, like say in the swimming pool, sometimes you might see a guy who maybe doesn't look physically in the best shape, but because his technique is so good, he's way better than the big muscly guy who has no shoulder mobility. Do you know? Yeah.
Absolutely. I've had so many conversations with people in the fitness realm, and when I talk about like triathlons or just long distance endurance sports, I always bring up Tarek and Esteban. Yeah. I'm like, if you see these guys walking down the road, you'd be like, nah, no, never.
And then kill you on a Friday.
And then on a bike ride, like I watch Tarek, I'm like, this is just like, I can't, like, it's not physically possible for me to keep up. Yeah. As hard as I try, it's like, it's just,
Yeah, they're strong on the bike, definitely.
Amazing. I wanted to ask you, just dabble into your childhood. How did you were born and raised in Ireland?
So I was born in north of Ireland, but that would be still British land, but I have an Irish passport, so I would consider myself Irish. So I grew up in Northern Ireland in a town called Omagh. And that's where I spent my childhood, most of my life. And growing up, I did a bit of cross country at school, but really, if some of my teachers would look back now and see that I'm like a triathlon coach and was a PE teacher, they'd probably laugh because they're like, I was not sporty at school. I wasn't really into it. I was really small, which now is an advantage. But back then, we would have played like in Ireland, we played Gaelic football, and like it's quite physical, and like I was never very good at it. But I was a good enough runner, and then I stopped all that for a long time, and then in my, may say, 20s, I came back to running, and because I had that little previous experience of running, I felt more confident to do the running. I kind of roughly knew how to train, and then I did really excel. Like, I remember my first goal in running was just to break 20 minutes for 5K, and I did that like the first week of training. So, you know, like, not that that's a super high level, but it was good for me to be able to do that like early, and I knew then like I could be kind of good at this. And then, to try and cut the story short, I worked as a lifeguard locally. So I had some swimming, but not, I had lifeguard swimming, but not like, say, how I train now, doing like reps or intervals. So I worked as a lifeguard there, and there was a local guy, Albert, and he said to me, he goes, Barney, you're pretty skinny, you're pretty light, you'd be good at triathlon. And I heard of him doing all these triathlons, so I was like, I'll give it a go. I signed up, and my big goal was to beat this man who was like mid-50s, almost 60, but I thought, like, I have to beat him. And that was where I started. I did my first pool swim in a Derry lane ball, which was, you just swam 750 meters in the pool, and then you did 20k, 5k run, and after that I was hooked. Like, that was my whole life, my personality. That was just who I am. Triathlon was I was just totally obsessed. Okay. And then just kept going from there, and just each year would have 8 to 10 races each season. And that was 2011 when I did my first triathlon. So I would have been 21 when I started. So yeah, been doing a good while now.
Wow, that's incredible, man.
Yeah.
And in terms of high school to university, what made you move into teaching?
So that's good. So basically, you ever heard of the childhood story of Goldilocks?
Yes.
You know, her first porridge is a bit salty, the next one's a bit sweet, and the third one's just right. That was me with university. Okay. So I dropped out of the first one within 6 weeks. The next one, I got up to Easter, so about April time, dropped out of that one. But I was doing like business with accountancy and like engineering management. I didn't love this at all. So I went home and I was working as a lifeguard, and that's when I was like, I love sport. Like, I used to work like this, sitting as a lifeguard, and I'd have to watch people come in for their swimming session, and they'd come in really grumpy. And then I'd see them after they'd exercised singing in the shower. I was like, how is that the same person? So I sort of made the connection, you know, like, sport makes people feel good. I enjoyed how people were enjoying, like, exercise was making them feel, and then that's when I just applied to do sports studies. Because I had good enough A levels, I was able to get into sports studies with some exercise science. That was my undergraduate. I stuck that degree out. I didn't drop out. I liked it. Each day I went to university, it was something I was into. So then after that, with that degree, it's kind of useless on its own, to be honest. It is a degree, but with that, you would have to either work with like a federation or like a sports science sort of perspective, but those jobs are quite hard to get. And then I got accepted into a master's in Limerick. But the University of Limerick was the high performance centre for triathlon. Now, I wasn't at that level, but I wanted to go there and train because I had a 50-metre pool. It was really good for. So basically, I did my master's there, but it was basically an excuse to
train.
It was basically like a full. Well, I had some work to do, but it was basically for training. I did like yeah. I was like living like a full-time athlete for a little while.
Amazing. It takes me back to my university days, and I wish I told my parents I don't want to do what they were like pushing me into, because sport was my whole life as well. And then when I decided to kick rugby, I went into engineering, and even when I finished, it was a slog. Yeah. It was an absolute slog to get through. But I knew, you know, at the time, the whole mentality of like the 9 to 5 and, you know, get a good job, get paid, you'll get your housing allowance and your insurance and all of that. And then if you work 35 to 40 years, it's all going to pay off, you know? Yeah. It's going to be worth it. And 5 years in, not even 5 years, like 3 years into DAW, it's like, same, like this little like bubble popped. I was like, man, like we're on this earth for such a short period of time. And it's unfortunate that not everybody can do what they enjoy, but having that like opportunity to shift gears and move into a different I'm just going to say like workspace that actually makes you happy, and you get to reap the rewards by seeing other people have their best hour or 2 hours of the day in front of you, it's quite rewarding in itself. Like if you took monetary, like money out of the picture and you just do what you love, I think you're in general gonna just be a more high performing person.
Yeah. Well, when you're working with your passion, you don't really feel like it's work.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
But the crazy thing is, I did all that university. I did undergrad, masters, and now I don't.
Use it.
Well, yeah, I do use it. Yeah. I say that's disingenuous because like there's things I learned in the masters about professionalism, how to conduct yourself. Like I still apply those to my coaching, but but I just think it's funny. Like my job role now as a triathlon coach, I didn't really need to do all that, but I do feel value in it. There's stuff I understand from that, how to conduct yourself well. But yeah, it was a long way to get there.
Well, look, I mean, at the end of the day, it's still in the wardrobe, you know. Like if anything happens, you've still got that paperwork, and that's like one thing. Also, you know, my parents always told me, it's like even if you don't use it, it's still there.
That was when I was thinking about quitting teaching to go full time with triathlon. That was like the little sound bite in my head. My worst case scenario is to go back to a job I like, because I like teaching. I was teaching young kids how to swim. It was rewarding. You know, I was outside wearing shorts every day.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't the worst case scenario, but then when I had the opportunity to go like into my passion of triathlon, then I just took it, because I've left all the schools that I worked in a good place, like good references. So like if I ever do want to go back, it's there. Yeah. But right now I'm really enjoying this journey. And
were you teaching in Ireland before you moved to Doha?
So basically I qualified as a teacher, but it's a hugely competitive market, because all the teachers locally are trying to get for that one school, but there's only one PE teacher in each school.
Oh yeah.
So it's quite competitive. So I did get some work working as a substitute, but like I'd spent almost 6 years in education, and like I was working as a substitute teacher, and then sometimes I was working in our family business with my mum, like pumping up petrol, you know, like the Wakud. I'd be the guy filling up your car, and I was like, I want to be a teacher. Like I've spent so long. So then a rare opportunity came where I was working in the shop, and my friend came in who I hadn't seen in a long time. She goes, "Oh, I'm moving out to Doha," and I was like, "I'd go in the morning." Is there any jobs going? And like later that day, the principal emailed her or the group of the school that she was going to and says, "Does anyone know a PE teacher?" I literally sent her my CV. We had a Zoom call, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, I was in a plane to Doha. I honestly didn't know her. I really wasn't that sure of Qatar on a map. I just knew it was the Middle East. It was going to be good, hot for training, and I was gone. Yeah,
amazing.
I just took the opportunity, and since that, I suppose there was a catalyst of things that happened in my life. Like, got a good job in a school. Then I met my wife. I have now 2 kids here. Then now I'm doing my job I really like. So it's kind of, if I hadn't have taken that jump, I wouldn't have all the other great things that's happened. So it's all about taking the chance that you get, I think.
Absolutely. Opportunities, if they arise. You know, the amount of, like, I wouldn't say opportunities, but just nuggets that I've given people back home. Because going back home is always quite interesting. You know, like a lot of my mates are, you know, in this like hamster wheel. And it's great. Like, I'm not saying they don't love their life. They do. But it's quite interesting, like over the years, how I found that you can give people as many opportunities as they want. But when it comes to the point of, okay, yes, I'm going to do it, or sign the document, you know, you're going to fly out, or you're moving out and you're moving away from the nest. When that moment comes, it's not easy.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of them buckle on that last, almost want to say that last little rollover. And then the other flip of the coin is when you're on the other side, they're like, "Oh, you have it so good, man. You know, like you're doing so well." I'm like, bro.
You had to take the chance.
Yeah,
there
exactly.
was a lot of uncertainty. Like, it's not as if you just knew everything was going to work out.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like you just made a valid point. Like at the time when you moved, you weren't even certain where on the map Qatar is.
And you knew roughly where it was. It was just,
it's around there.
Yeah.
It's close to Dubai. That was like my my map.
That's something I don't like when I go back home, because I'm quite proud. I work in Qatar now, try and make sure they know where it is. But like every week, every time I go home in the summer to the coffee shop, they'll be like, "How's Dubai?" And I'm like, "I don't live in Dubai. I don't live anywhere near Dubai." They're like, "Oh." Then the next year, I've been coming home like 4 or 5 years in a row, and they're like, "It's good."
Yes.
Just I've explained this 5 times to you, 5 summers in a row.
You got to give up at some point. Yeah, it's great. It's great.
It's good. You should come. You won't see me.
Oh man, that's hilarious. I was chatting to someone yesterday talking about Qatar, and we were talking about the FIFA World Cup, and he was telling me a story about this Argentinian fan group that was coming over to watch the football in Qatar, and it was probably about like 150 people, part of this group, and they all booked their tickets and accommodation in Bahrain.
Oh my god.
Because the flag is so similar. So everyone moved to Bahrain to come watch the game in Doha. Once they got there, they were like,
"Where's the World Cup? Where's the stadium?"
There was there's no fans, there's no advertising, no marketing. They're like, what? This sucks.
It's a bit quiet, isn't
it? Yeah, it was hilarious. I didn't know about it. I was like, man, this is crazy. So it just shows you, the Qatar's such a small speck on the on the map, but it's a great place to be. And
some people sort of think it's tough over here, or I think they just need I'm so glad I came, because it's such a great lifestyle here, but people are sometimes a bit ignorant to it.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. I agree. So in terms of teaching, you what's the age group that you teach at?
So basically, I trained as a secondary teacher, so I was meant to be teaching from ages say 11 to 18. In the Irish curriculum, but here, because of the demographic of the schools, like most people have young families, so you're teaching all the way from 3 to 18, depending on your school, if they've got a secondary school. So for a few years I was working in a school which had kids all the way from 3 to 18, and then the next school I worked in was just primary from 3 to ages 3 to 11. So, but the really good thing about the curriculum here in comparison to Ireland is 50% of it is swimming. So as a PE teacher, you're also in charge of the swim program and all their sports. So I really enjoyed that, because you'll have a kid come in that's like petrified of water. They're so scared of it, and then by the end of the year, they're maybe not swimming, but they're not scared. Yeah, not scared. They can like tread water, keep their head up, and like I feel that's very tangible. That I saw him come in the first day of school, and he was. We actually have a term in one of the schools I worked in. We call them stage 5 clinger. Because they're so scared of the water, and then your job is, it's almost like a counselor to reassure them. Yeah. So it's not just like you just teach them how to swim. You have to be really like empathetic. Like, I know it's scary, I know it's hard. That's a different role to like say how I coach like adults, So it's taught me different things about like taking your time with things, and at that age you really want them to love the water, so that then they enjoy it, but their exposure to it at a young age is hugely important for their development.
Absolutely. Almost every single person I talk to when it comes to triathlon specifically, their first question is about the water. Yeah. And even though it's the smallest part of the race, I think it's the most daunting for them.
There's no pause. There's no so if you get tired on the bike, you just stop. Yeah. If you get tired on the run, you can stop and walk. There's no so when you commit to an open water swim, it's either finish or get either lifted by a kayak or
lay on your back and just float.
Get some help. But that's why it is. It's either do or you have to finish it. That's why it's so daunting. That's why I think the pool swim triathlons are really good for someone who's a beginner to start, because it's safe. You can get through it. There's lifeguards there. Like if fear of the water is something that you're scared of, that's definitely a good place. That's where I did my first triathlon, was a pool swim. I think that's where most people should start out.
I agree. When I started to dabble into it, it was just after COVID, and my first one was at Education City.
Yeah,
it was the best highlight or introduction into triathlons.
I think locally, it's probably one of the best options because it's so safe. It's like done up and down the pool, and then like your biking is on closed roads, your running is fairly safe on closed roads as well. for starting out, as someone who wants to try, and they even have shorter distances. So you say if you're not up to swimming, their biggest length is 500 meters. So you can even do like a 200-meter swim, really just to get used to the swim, bike, run. I think most people with a tiny bit of training could do those small events, and it's once you do it, you'll probably be hooked.
It's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
As soon as I finished, I was like, okay. And then when they had the series, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Because every month you have like something to look forward to.
Yeah.
It was really good. My most enjoyable one was definitely Qatar.
Yeah.
That was my favorite.
That's a good it's a good course. Like the swim is nice. The bike's quite fast, and there's actually tiny few hills.
Yes.
And then you've got hills in the run.
It just gave the best true life feel for what like a longer distance race would be, because it was straight on, like you say, straight on the bike with a small little incline over that overpass, and then the run was actually really scenic, so it's beautiful. Like that's like the one thing I don't like about Bahrain's run.
Yeah, it's just
there's like nothing scenic about it.
Brick and like
exactly.
A small bit on the seafront, but Bahrain isn't like aesthetically maybe the best, but it's a fast course.
Yeah.
You know, that's why people travel. Like
for sure,
there's guys flying in from Russia.
They just want to break records.
Yeah. And that's hopefully good for that.
Yeah. So that was my favorite course, man. But in terms of triathlon specifically, what made your transition from deciding, okay, you know, I'm enjoying my life in Doha, I love coaching the kids, but I want to fully commit myself?
So I suppose it was just I was doing a small bit of coaching on the side, and then I just realized, like, geez, I could probably make this my full-time gig. Like, I don't think I left teaching like financially. It's similar or the same. You know, it's not as if I did this to like really make more money, but for terms of lifestyle and also then helping more athletes, because it meant that when I was full-time, I could take a few more athletes on, so I could do it on a bit more of a larger scale. But yeah, just for say my own lifestyle and also getting more invested in the athletes that I'm coaching was one of the big drivers for it. And yeah, so far so good.
Okay.
But one of the things with the coaching is just the reliability of, say, you know, people will come on board for an Ironman and they're your client for a little while. Then you have to sort of, it seems almost like a breakup when they're finished the race and they take a break. But I've always ended with athletes on a really good basis, and there's sort of a nice goodbye. Never like, oh, you're leaving. It's always the best way to do it. And I've had people who come on board now 3 times. They've trained with me for a while. They'll take a break and then they'll come back. And that's sort of the hard thing in terms of, like, you know, say a business perspective, is keeping the client level at a good rate so that you can sustain it. You know, that's one of the challenges. But then I'd say that's my main only challenge. And the other thing is it's deeply rewarding. You know, getting those nice texts. I've gotten faster. I've got a PB. So that's kind of the seesaw balance. Whereas when you work in a school or a paycheck, it's
very continuous.
You're getting the money. So yeah, and also, but it makes you reliable to have to do a good job. Like, I have to be checking in on people. I have to be providing a good service, or well, they're gonna go. You know, it's if you do good work, you're fine. If you slack or lazy, or so that's sort of the challenge of it. But so far, I've really enjoyed it.
I think with triathlon training, and especially the long distance, say the Ironman, or predominantly for me, like all the half Ironman events, it's seasonal, right? In terms, like exactly like you were saying. So essentially, people will pick maybe 2 or 3 races a year. So it'd be like 3 months of training or 4 months of training, and then a month, 2 month rest, and then 3 months, 4 months of training, month or so rest. So you have like that little loop in between.
Yeah. So like, a summer is quite a quiet month, and like often athletes will take a break then, and then because they usually travel, because everyone's sort of, they live in different countries. That's kind of their off season, so like, just they take a bit of a break, and then usually August onwards is quite busy.
Yeah,
but
I mean, in my trade, it's relatively similar. It's a little bit more consistent because I think the general training is more just for longevity and health.
Yeah.
And then the odd athlete will have maybe an event, so maybe competing for Phoenix Games or for an event somewhere on the GCC. But in general, it's a lot more continuous.
Yeah.
Because they just constantly stay in the gym. So even when they're traveling, they'll use a hotel gym or whatever the case may be. But what I found that's like quite helpful is I tend to take, and I know it's difficult because you have wife and kids. For me, it's way easier. But I kind of take my holidays around everyone else's holidays, if that makes sense. So when there is that like long break, like say for instance the summer, I know okay, there's going to be about 6 to 8 weeks of downtime. Hopefully, I would have accumulated over the months and then used that as my holiday break and been like, okay, well, it's
it's sort of similar with me because my wife's a teacher, so we have the summers. We usually travel home to see all the family.
Okay,
so that's my downtime. Similar setup as well.
How's the summer in Ireland?
Good. Well,
still cold?
Not too bad.
You don't sound convinced.
Like you'd still have to wear a wetsuit.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Cape Town, Atlantic Ocean, especially around the south coast, it's freezing. It can be 35 degrees out, 40 degrees out. When you dip your toe in that Camps Bay water, it's like...
so near us is Atlantic as well, so I do a bit of surfing. And it's still cold. Like I still wear booties. I wear booties.
Yeah. I can't, man. I try, and it can be roasting outside. Like it's a different cold. It's like it's through the bones. In terms of triathlon training, I wanted to ask you specifically about the training section. Like when you have a client that jumps on board, how I know it's very different from client to client, but how would you generally assess based on the event that they want to participate in, how would you assess their week? Because what I've noticed is like over the year and a half is there's like a certain amount of hours that you need to match.
Yeah, the structure of the week. So really depends on their previous training history. So usually out of consultation with them, I have to understand their age, their commitments, like if they got wife, kids, like previous training history and injuries. So before we'd have a call just to go through all that stuff because I don't want to be prescribing training that's like too ambitious, maybe not take into account, say, mostly it's running injuries. So I'm very cautious of how much running load I would give someone. If someone wants to swim and bike more, I'm kind of happier with that because it's non-impact. So from a training perspective, say someone came on board, kind of answering your question, I think.
Yes.
So if someone came on board and they had a previous training history and an injury, then I'd be a bit more cautious on how much running they would do. So, each person will be different, but it's all about that first consultation, how I prescribe the training for them. And the first few weeks of training would probably involve some test sessions so that I can get accurate training zones for them so that they're training appropriately. They can actually do the training and it's going to be like a progressive. Because the worst thing that could happen if someone comes on board is that you give them a training session they can't complete. And already that's going to knock their confidence and they're not going to... So I'd rather go on the easier side, get them some consistency in a week. I try and always develop a weekly routine. Like we always do our Friday rides. Sometimes you might do a long run. The training sessions might change, but I think if you develop a weekly routine specific to you, that's going to be a good strategy.
You mentioned something really important. Almost 99% of the reason why I decided to start my journey with you and no other coach was the running part. Like I've torn almost every ligament in my right knee a couple of years ago, and I'll never forget just after COVID, did the old staying indoors, so you got to get outdoors. So I bought the bicycle and all that jazz, and that got me into triathlons. But when I decided, okay, this is something that I really want to do, I reached out to a friend of mine, and he was on your program. And when we had our consultation, and I went through the training plan, I noticed like the run was only like 1 or 2 runs a week, and I was like, yes, this is great. And it's not that I hate running; it was just that I know like how much impact it would affect my leg if I had running 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, even today, like, I mean, I've got 2 mates that are joining me in Bahrain, and the only thing they worry about is the running. And I'm like, like, I think
there's huge crossover. So that my philosophy as a coach is like, there's huge crossover benefits from swimming and cycling that will help your running. Now, it doesn't mean you can't run at all, but I might only run 3 times a week, but I'm doing a lot of swim and bike volume as well. And I think there's huge benefits aerobically. Like your heart and lungs are getting a real good workout on the swim and bike, but you've got none of that like ligament worry or impact. So I think that's a nice way to do it, especially if you are prone to injuries. And often triathletes, when they do get an injury, they just, obviously they love exercise, so they just do more swimming and more biking, and they usually return to running after a few weeks. They're like back to where they were, and that's my belief, is that it's because of the cross training benefits.
Absolutely. Another method that I'd noticed too was I was chatting to Islam, and he did the fasted marathon in Paris, and he utilized a lot of cycling to add to the volume for the running. So he like used the almost want to say, like, he would run on day one, would say be like a tempo or speed work, and then he would cycle, run, cycle. So you would still only be running 2 to 3 times a week, and the rest would be on the cycling. And it made sense. It made sense to me, because you're still working like your lower body component, and you're keeping your heart rate at a pace that ideally should be beneficial for when you attack a long distance run like 42 kilometers.
The only thing that you do need to keep in track is just the load in the body, because you are still going to have to run 26 miles. So you still I'd still cross train, but you still need to be having that weekly long run where you're exposing yourself to that, because if you just do swimming and biking, you'll soon be caught out by.
Absolutely.
So you still need to load the body, but you don't need to run every day.
For sure. Another thing I wanted to ask you about is, especially for myself, and I'm sure there's a few people out there that struggle with this too, and this probably just comes with time, but to shorten the time, the biggest blow up for me in a race is coming off the bike and like the first 2 kilometers of the run. It feels like every single part of my from my waist to my kneecap is about 3 times bigger.
Yeah.
Would that specifically be that you're either pushing too hard on the bike, or would it just be giving yourself some time to maybe...
It could be a range of factors. Some people feel better after a few kilometers. You feel better then, like say kilometer 3, 4 gets better.
Absolutely.
Could be just like maybe your bike position, maybe some fueling, but also maybe a small bit of just getting that movement again and getting going again. Then you feel better. But there could be a range of factors. It could be possibly over biking a little bit, maybe fueling. Have you hit the carbs that you need to take for the race? So things like that, yeah.
Okay, cool. Because the one thing that was very helpful was coming off the bike was to drop, like, I remember we spoke about it before, was to drop your running speed on your first, say, kilometer.
Yeah, I would.
And then almost gradually.
Yeah, like if you're starting out, I would definitely go for like a build run philosophy, sort of like, if you really know your paces and you know I've done this before in a half Ironman, you can go out at your target pace and hold it. But generally, it would be better to treat it almost like a build run, where you're getting gradually faster and faster. And usually, what this happens is you're catching other people. It's quite motivational. So, like, you get to 10K, you've caught 4 or 5 people, then you know you're constantly moving through, and then it's always nice to finish strong. In any race. So I think that's a nice way to do it if you're not sure of your perfect pacing. If you've been doing a lot of half Ironmans and you know I've been able to hold 4:30 pace per kilometer, then you can just go out at that pace and hold it, because you've previously done it before and maybe your training's gone a bit better, so you know that that's a comfortable range. But if you're not sure of what you can really hold, I think starting out easy is definitely the best way to just build into it. Hold it there, see how I'm feeling. If I feel good, then push a little bit more, and then you're getting closer to the end of the race. So that's kind of how you don't want to burn your matches straight away. And your first kilometer should not be the fastest. If your first kilometer is the fastest, you've probably messed it up. That's the first thing I look at on Training Peaks, is like, I have a look at the first K, and then I judge in the rest of the race, because if that was the fastest, you've probably burnt all your matches, and then you're going to go down.
Yeah. It's happened to me
no. But the thing is, you're so bored of the bike. Yeah. You've done the swim, you've done the bike, everything's good. You haven't had a puncture, you haven't had a mechanical. You're kind of like, oh, this is good. Into the running now. So you're feeling motivated, because sometimes you worry about all those, like, will I get a puncture? Those stuff. And then, like, you just feel good. Well, sometimes you feel good, or you feel like you want to really push it. Maybe the caffeine's kicked in that you took on the bike. So there's a range of factors, but definitely holding back those first few K is very helpful. Now, if you're like talking about professional level, they can't do that. They have to race the race.
For sure. Okay. Awesome. you hit another topic that I wanted to talk about, and that was nutrition. It's like one of the main things, like especially like with my two friends that are now coming with me to Bahrain to race. It's like one of the major topics that they talk about, and you've given a lot of insight on social media about it. But I wanted to ask you, just to give a brief, I just want to say insight to, if I was doing an endurance race, what would my carb intake be, or carb sodium intake be? I know it's very diverse compared to person to person.
I'll put a disclaimer here. I have no nutritional background. If you have specific nutritional needs, you should speak with a nutrition dietitian. So I'm just putting that disclaimer there, because sometimes I feel like when I give nutrition advice, I'm like, this isn't my background. But basically, what I do know about
for yourself.
I'm talking about myself here for context. So basically, I would work on a carbohydrate load. There's different researches of that where people would have a 2 to 3 day load, and there's newer research saying that you can just do it the day before. And you're working on 8 to 10 grams of carbohydrates per kilo of body weight. So rough math, if someone was 70 kg, they'd need to eat 700 grams at the higher end. Now, I've tried this and I found it difficult, almost impossible. Like, it's mountains of rice and pasta. So I would be probably more 7 to 8 is what I can manage and hold. And the reason I'm saying that's for me is you need to go find what works for you. So just because I can do it, some people mightn't even be able to stomach that. You need to practice it in training. So we do our Friday rides. You might try on a Thursday to hit that carb intake just to see how you feel, how your stomach is. So it's definitely a practice. It's not like a set rule for everyone. Yeah. Some people could even probably eat more than that amount and be fine. So that's something I've worked on recently, is just making sure I'm hitting that the day before. So then I'm well topped up for the race.
Okay. So this rate per kilogram of carbohydrates is, when you say you're loading it, is that a day before the race for yourself?
I personally go for a day before a race. Okay. Just the 2 days before, I probably will be high in carbs, but I wouldn't be like monitoring it as such. And then the day before the race, this is something I did in Salalah. So I did 3 sessions the day before. I did a swim, a bike, and a run, but we're talking like 15-minute sessions.
Okay.
But what I found is, because I was eating so much high carb foods that make you feel like, we're talking marshmallows, Haribos, stuff that maybe wasn't the best, but it was going to help me meet my carbohydrate intake. And when you intake that sort of food, there's always like a spike in insulin, so you feel like. But I found just doing those little sessions helped me like steer that away. So I felt me feeling quite even though I was eating. So I was doing small little. I did a little bit of swim, a little bike, and a little run. And I felt although I was eating a huge amount of carbs, I didn't have that big, that slump. Yeah. So that was something I did. I'll probably do that around my next race. I'll be having a high carb day the day before, and I'll be just doing small bouts of exercise to keep that insulin spike away.
And that would be the day before the race,
The day
correct?
before the race. So you're talking very light sessions. Like, nothing you do the day before the race is really going to, like, you just need to keep the legs turning over. You're not going to get any fitter. It's just like literally a 20-minute run or a 20-minute bike.
So keeping the body primed, essentially.
Yeah, you're not doing anything that's taxing. Like, it's not very hard, or it's maybe a few little pickups. But personally, the reason I do that is I'm usually quite nervous before the race. So I find just doing a little bit of training helps me like calm down a bit.
Absolutely.
So that's personal to me. That you might be chilled out just sitting on the couch and you can relax, then that's what you should do. So it's finding out. I always say you have to find out what works for you. This is just general advice. And then before the race, I'll have. So when you're traveling to these races, you're usually staying in a hotel. And it's difficult to persuade them to open up the breakfast buffet at 4:30 in the morning. So usually I travel with just simple cereal, and I'll get some milk, and that's my breakfast in the morning. Just simple, because I know at 4:30 in the morning I can quickly make it. It's not a big hassle. If you're relying on like hotel porridge, or that's my route, that's going to be a bit difficult to logistics to sort on race morning. So that would be my race morning breakfast. Quick coffee in the room, and then onto the race. Typically I would have a gel 30 minutes before, and then onto the bike I might have up to 4 gels and 2 high mix bottles that will have my carbs and electrolytes. That's just what works for me. And then onto the run. The run, I don't find I can take as much because of the impact. Like your stomach is jostling up and down, so I don't think digestion is as good. So really, the bike is the main avenue to fuel the run. Almost, you're taking stuff on the bike that's going to help you in the run. The stuff you're taking on the run is probably just keeping you topped up a little bit.
Okay, and that again, gram per body weight, you're utilizing that on the day of the race as well.
Yeah, your glycogen stores are already really topped up because you've ate the day before. So then on race day, you're taking the fuel just to keep yourself going for that race. And
it would still be that same amount. So
no, that's just for your carbohydrates. That's your carbo loading.
I see. Okay.
During the race, you'd work on a carbohydrate per hour.
Okay.
So I think I'd be like around 60 to 70 grams, no, a bit more than that, say 80 to 90 grams per hour.
Okay.
So that could be one bottle and one gel per hour.
That makes sense.
On the bike, yeah, that makes sense. So you're not trying to, no way are you going to get 700, because that's a day's worth of food.
That you're trying to fit into 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah, it'd be very important. Tough,
Yeah.
especially because you're working at such a high rate as well. So that's important to note that.
Okay, all right, that makes total sense, because I know a lot of people get confused with that rate. They think they need to digest that on the day of the race.
So
which
during the race, say
I've seen a lot of people get the bloated belly.
Yeah,
you know, it's pretty. I mean, nutrition. It sounds like such a simple thing. Okay, I need to do this. I need to digest this amount of stuff. But one thing that's really helped me and is, like you say, to practice that nutrition not long before the race, but you need to start trialing it before you actually do it on race day, because I've had experiences where I blow up totally. You know, my stomach gives all kinds of weird signals and signs, and I don't know if I need to stop, run, pause, because that nutrition it's quite a strange thing to digest.
Yeah, it's quite it's viscous, it's kind of thick. But it's important to note that. So you're only trying to get like 300 or 400 grams of carbs, depending on your finish time. That's what you would take during the race.
Okay,
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So you do your load the day before, and then hit between. I just want to make sure it's
70 to 80 grams of carbs
per hour.
Per hour.
And your salt?
So I'm not that much, I don't look into electrolytes that much, but I'd have some in each of my bottles.
Okay.
So depending on the race, I might have a bit more for a hotter race, but I don't really I couldn't tell you my sodium intake. Or
you know what I have noticed is that the smaller athlete with less amount of muscle mass very rarely struggles with the sodium side of it. And the only reason this is just my assumption, it's only something that I've just noticed around people, is that call it the heavier athlete, or someone that's got more body mass, more muscle mass. I don't know if it's their muscles need more I wouldn't say hydration, but I think maybe they perspire more, or their muscles are just looking for something more to keep it hydrated.
They're going to be running a bit hotter, to cool themselves down.
Correct.
So they're probably going to have maybe more issues in the heat and stuff. So their body's going to probably heat a bit more. Because if you look at the smaller, lighter athletes, like recently at Ironman Kona, Patrick Lange won it. He's like small, light guy. Whereas other, say, bigger guys, they struggled in the heats a bit more. But I think definitely being a bit smaller and lighter is probably an advantage for the run in the heat. But the bigger guys are better on the bike because they've got the absolute power. So it's kind of a trade-off balance. Both can be successful, but it's utilizing their strengths. So not overbiking too much, because the run's going to be difficult for the bigger guy. And the smaller guy is going to struggle to even be near the bike, but he can run well. So it's kind of... It works out fair. You just need to use your resources as well. If that makes sense in a certain way. But definitely, I've found that true with people I coach as well. That smaller athletes usually do better in the heat. But I think your exposure to heat training before is going to help as well.
Well, that was my next question. Is I've noticed, I don't know if it's that the summer's a bit lagging a bit longer now, coming into November and December, but like getting heat adaptive in training, I think is quite it's almost like a trump card.
Yeah.
You know, if you can, I know it sucks during training. I mean, I can vouch for it. I absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
Like to run, specifically running at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning here in Doha or in the Middle East when it's still relatively summer season, it's treacherous, you know?
Yeah, I have some athletes doing that now because I learned that mistake myself. So I did Oman half Ironman a few years ago, and you're running at the hottest part of the day because swim bike. By the time you finish the bike, you're into the hottest part of the day. But I was doing all my long runs at like 6 a.m. and 6 a.m. to 12 is like worlds apart. So now when I'm coaching athletes for heading for Bahrain, so typically you'll be running at 9 or 10 a.m. So I try and have them do their long run just to get some exposure, not every week, but just some weeks so that they, on race day,
you know what it feels like.
they'd be like, I've done this before, it's fine, I can do this, you know? So that's something to work on.
For sure. And then in terms of, because you're an athlete yourself, you participate in the half Ironman races and triathlon races. How do you find the, coaching, training balance between the two?
So I train probably mostly on my own. I do a lot of individual training, but I look forward to Fridays, like our group ride, and that's where we all like sort of meet up together. But an endurance ride, for as long as we're all working at the same level, it's great to work with the group, and it's still a good workout. It's still a hard enough workout for me every Friday. So I think I look forward to that because that's my social avenue as well. I know although it's my work, like they've all become good friends, and it's like that's where although I do the session, I'm there to enjoy it as well with everyone else.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a difficult one because you do a lot of solo training, and then group rides are a key part of me feeling a bit more normal because I used to work as a teacher and you have your colleagues that you really like and staff room and all that's kind of gone. It could be lonely enough if you weren't really into it, because you're just programming or checking in on people. You're not really like part of a team as such. You're a one-man band. So I do look forward to the training, although it's kind of work. I don't think it's that bad.
Yeah, I get you. Look, the group rides is like, it's a fundamental component for me. Like if it wasn't there, I don't think I would be motivated enough to continue. As weird as that sounds. Even the odd group swim session, and the nice thing about the community too is people start like creating their own little groups in the community. So someone will like drop a text, hey, I'm going for a run Saturday morning. Whoever wants to join, I'm going to start it here. So
even I just seen people were like, Moed was going for a race and like Esteban gave a bike. That's, I don't think I would lend my bike to. But then there's people that I've coaching being really nice and sounding to each other, being very generous. And I like that group that, we're all sort of like, community, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's just a bunch of people I coach, but they've all, and the cool thing about it is we have South Africans, we have Qatari guys, we have Hungarian guys, Algerian guys. I can't list them all.
Yeah.
There's Kazakhstan, Dutch. So like literally on a group ride, you'll have like 12 nationalities, and that's cool that we're all one common ground is triathlon, but like it doesn't matter where you're from, swim, bike, run. It's
so true. It's so true. Another topic that I wanted to bring up, and you brought it up on social media, was I wanted to talk about the Zone 2 training. And I found it like super interesting what you spoke about, and it was very relative to my life.
Yeah.
Because I'm deep down inside, I'm like really hyper competitive. Like I hate losing, even though I lose every event. When I say lose, like I'm never first place. So the thing with like triathlons for me is just as long as I beat my time, I don't care about anything else. Yeah. But in general, the Zone 2 training, I think a lot of people make the mistake, including myself, because there's this, I wouldn't say status, but it's more of this like personal ego that goes on by looking at your stats, watching your numbers.
So there's a few things locally that I think people don't really grasp. Is like, first of all, if you're measured from the wrist, sometimes it's really inaccurate. So the first thing I would do is chest strap, because what you think is Zone 2 might not even be Zone 2. And because we're, even the winter months here, still pretty hot. Like we're training in 25 to 30 degree heat. So your heart rate's going to be like 15 to sometimes 20 beats higher. So when someone thinks they're zone 2, they're probably not, or they're probably, there's heat stress. They could be measured from the wrong sensor. So that's something I see locally, as you mightn't even really be in zone 2. You might be a bit higher because of the heat stress, or there's other things going on.
Sorry, when you say strap, you're talking about the heart rate monitor?
I think this is the chest strap here is the gold standard. Like that's if anyone, that's the first question. Say if they upload a workout to Training Peaks and I see the heart rate's a bit like sky high, that first question I'll be like, where do you measure this from? Because that's the first thing I would get down to it. And then if it is chest strap, then I'll be looking at the time of day, how hot it was. So there's a few things I'll be looking out to see if it was a good zone 2 session, or were they maybe working too hard because of heat stress, or was it done accurately? So those are that's my checklist.
Okay.
Chest strap, time of day, and then also you might have to think about your hydration status before, because if you went into a session quite dehydrated, your heart rate's going to be very high as well.
Okay, that makes sense. And I'm assuming everybody, when it comes to zone 2, they would have their zone 2 at different heart rates.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Like, for instance, listening to pro cyclists, they would be able to breeze on 155 beats per minute for however many hours, and they would be riding at
300 watts or more.
Wild state. But then, if someone like myself at 200 watts would be pretty close to what I would call I wouldn't say threshold, but it's it's there. It's close to that.
It's probably just their genetic capacity is so much higher, and their work rate is just so much better than us. And plus the years and years of conditioning has got them to that level. So it's hard to compare. Sometimes that's actually annoying for a coach to some athletes to see all this stuff, because they're it seems like Everest. You're like, I'll never get to that level.
It is.
You probably, to be honest, the Tour de France riders are I put the analogy, you sift for gold. You have to keep going through it, and some get through and through and through. And the finest particles, that's kind of they're the rare genetic,
the creme de la creme.
Yeah. So it's hard to compare yourself to some of those guys.
For me, it's always the runners. The bike rides. Okay, I'm not saying that I would ever get there, but the running for me is the wildest. When you see these marathon runners and their paces, it's almost unfathomable. And I think a lot of people, especially in this the strength and conditioning, or predominantly the strength sector, I don't think they realize how insane that time is, because their only relevance is what they've picked up or what they've lifted. And then going for a run would be I'm going for a run. They wouldn't really manage and understand how insane that is. It blows my mind, honestly.
The conditioning, but then there's a lot of question marks about some recent performances, whether
what they're using.
But they might be using extra supplements. I don't know.
But that's like that in all high professional sport, not even endurance. I mean, there is not one person on earth that can convince me that the top 50 to 100 CrossFit athletes in the world are not on some kind of PED. And it's not me even being biased. I genuinely don't care. If I was the governor of the world and we were watching like professional sport, I would say, open the gates. Why are we watching?
Yeah.
Why are you watching sport? You're watching it for two things. You want to see greatness, and you want to see something on television that drives you and pushes you. And if you're already at that high pinnacle point, if anything, those PEDs are probably going to benefit and help you with longevity. If I, for instance, got to a point where I was at the highest profession, the highest pinnacle of my profession, and let's even just talk business, wouldn't you always look for an edge and advantage to stay on that platform to make sure that you're getting the best of the best to stay there and be number one?
Yeah, I think it's probably rife that we just don't know about it. The one I think about sometimes is football, and it's crazy. Say you think of Cristiano Ronaldo with these assets for a business, and you've got this £1 million billion, I don't know.
Yeah,
whatever.
Correct.
His asset, that's an asset for your business, and it's injured. Do you really think they're going to stick to their ethical considerations? For
chicken and rice, mate?
Yeah. Well, wait. So I think there's so much scope we don't know about going on. that we'll never know about because it's the more powerful you are. It's actually the lower sports like cycling and running where they're getting caught more. I think it's probably widespread. We just don't know about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you had a huge asset, like say you're footballers, you're going to do the right thing.
For sure.
They're going to do what they can.
They've almost every single high performing athlete that's the best in the sport that they do have the best nutritionists, the best doctors, the best physiotherapists, the best everything. So the fact that they're constantly on the edge of science when it comes to biochemistry, like, come on.
There's probably some question marks around things that we just
and if anything, like, good for them, man. I mean, look, even the triathlon races, bro. Like, look at these guys' times. Yeah. Like when I actually sit and I look at it, like, especially if you've done that exact course, you've done that race, like, not even comparing, just being relative to like what you can do and what these people can do, it's like mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's the same with the person that deadlifts 200 kilos and then the professional in that sport deadlifts 500. It's like, okay, well,
so something's up here. We will just never know. That's the thing. That's kind of annoying. But there isn't. We think about a level playing field, and it's not really like.
No,
it's not going to be.
Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, 90% of the people that are doing any form of physical activity and using a sport as their form of activity, as long as they're enjoying it and they get the benefit of the dopamine kick, because for instance, I use this as an example. Me beating my, hopefully next weekend, my last year's Bahrain time, and the guy that wins the championship, I think the dopamine kick is exactly the same.
Yeah, the buzz after. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty true. Like, I'd say, some of the prize money he won last weekend in Dubai was probably up the dopamine.
Yeah, for sure.
But I know what you mean.
I wasn't going for the money. You know what I mean? I'm paying to play. but
no,
yes,
I know what you mean.
Yes.
The dopamine, like the level of the buzz after a race, is what's the reason we're usually still sweaty before we're entering our next race. You know.
Absolutely.
So I agree with that definitely.
And then just a few more questions in terms of. I would love to know, again, you spoke about it quite recently, is how you've implemented strength training into your triathlon training, because I do find there's this little fine divide between people that do endurance sports and they almost feel like, it's not that they're nervous, but they're almost worried like the gym is going to injure them for the endurance.
Mine's came from, actually, I was doing like strength conditioning as a triathlete is something that's always it's moved around. So if I'm training peaks, I always move it around because I'm like, I'll do my swim, because I like swim, bike, and run. Strength conditioning feels like a bit like doing your homework. You don't want it. You know, it's like dotting your I's and crossing the T's. You know you should do it. You know what good athletes do, but it often gets moved around. And actually, the stimulus for me changing my training was actually I had a bad race in Nice because it was such a hilly course, and my back just seized up. Like, because I was so not used to the climbing so much on the bike.
The elevation?
Yeah, because the Doha is so
flat,
exactly. But it was also, there's a weakness there. I could feel that, my back wasn't as strong as it should be. So then afterwards, when I came back, I was like, next year, I'm going to do at least minimum 1 session to 2 sessions per week of just working on strengthening that area. And so far, it's helped.
Benefited.
But it's hard to see because, if you do run training and you get faster, it's hard to see the tangible benefits sometimes because you were looking at a strength and you actually don't want to see it because you do want to see the strength. What I'm saying is you don't actually get a tangible benefit. Injury prevention is why we're doing it. So you might never know, but it's always there in the background. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're doing those things to be more consistent so that you can run better, that you're more robust, so that you're hitting the ground a bit better, you're not falling apart. Because realistically, the strength conditioning I'm doing is for injury prevention, but also from say hours 3 to 4. I want my body to be robust and well, and I'm not like, my glutes aren't failing or my hips are sagging. I'm getting, I want to be able to run proper, and that comes from having strong and robust muscles, so that hours 3 to 4 you're still as good as your hours 0 to 1, because everyone will be fine for the first part of the race, but when it gets tough,
the back end,
the back end. If you watch in Bahrain, the back end of you're gonna see people running like
head down.
Zombies, you know, and you don't want to be a zombie. So that's my sort of belief for the strength and conditioning stuff. So doing some heavy deadlifts, split squats, working on my glutes and some hamstring stuff, because that's my areas of weakness. So yeah,
basics. Just doing the basic movements for sure. I had a difference in a very like similar situation. It was I want to say the first race I did in Durban, I like for 3 months didn't touch a barbell or anything. I just like dived straight into just swim, bike, run. And it was also a hilly race, about 850 or 870 meters of elevation over the period, which for me is, compared to 300, it was like, it felt drastic, like the difference to cycling in Doha to South Africa. And my legs were toast. Like 8 kilometers into the run, I could already feel like every kilometer. You can like feel it sapping the soul out of your body. And then when I decided, okay, well, because I normally take 2 months off after a race, and then I prepare for the next race, and then I use that 2 months and I just do resistance training, try and like
get back to yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And then when I did Bahrain, I was like, all right, I'll leave all the CrossFit stuff out and just do like compound lifts and accessory lifts. So like you say, the basics, twice a week, like, and both sessions will be full body. So take like one exercise of upper body, say pull-ups or dumbbell rows, and then a bit for lower body and a bit for core. And the difference was like staggering. Yeah. And the only, like, it's not that I felt it during the race. I only felt it after the race. So like you said, like the back end, the last 5Ks of the run, I've never felt more refreshed.
Yeah, feeling like you can go. Yeah, so that's something I've noticed with it too, is just feeling that more robustness. And it actually, just to segue this, you know, like East to West is coming up. I actually think it's something that like a lot of ultra runners could actually benefit from, is because when you get to like hour 6, hour 7, it's not their ability to run, it's all the other accompanying muscles start falling apart. And like if you go to Dukan, you'll see some zombies just going like, so that's where I think actually some strength and conditioning would really help in that sector as well. And sometimes they're not really doing that as much.
And the trigger for it as well, when I noticed, okay, I need to add some resistance training in, was I was watching my heart rate, and while I was watching my body fail, and I couldn't understand like why I couldn't keep going, if that made sense. Like on the run, normally my heart rate's always a bit higher, but on that last, say 7 kilometers, my heart rate was at like 130, 135, but my legs just couldn't do what my like capacity of of my heart wanted me to continue on, which that for me was like staggering. I was like, that's weird. Like I would have thought that my heart rate would have been skyrocket. That's why my body's not moving well. But it's just that I think my muscles were breaking down. Yeah. And my body was still, all my conditioning was still good, but my muscles itself. And I'm just going to bring this into the last topic that I wanted to talk about. And that was, I'm sure a lot of people have had this experience too, where they do all the training and they get to race day, and the week before the race, they just go, okay, now I can relax. And there's this one thing that's happened to me. It happened to me last weekend. Was I did 4 days of no consistent training. So I used it as like my deload, but my deload was actually nothing. Yeah. Where deload should be, you're still moving.
So yeah, race week, like you can't really get any fitter, but you can ruin your race by saying what you did would have left you feeling quite stale, because you took like 4 days off, so your body's kind of went into a bit of a recovery mode. You kind of, it's like, what's this? So like you wouldn't have had to do much training, I think, to feel a bit better on race day. Just like 20-30 minute runs with some pickups, maybe on the bike, a few easy runs. So yeah, that's all. So in race week, you're gonna reduce overall volume. Like you're not doing your 3-hour bike rides, you're doing shorter sessions, but you still keep some intensity, just little 300, 400, maybe a few 400s as a run session. That would be a nice one, good few days before. So I would always work back from the race. So let's say we have a Friday race. On Thursday, I would do a light run session. On Wednesday would be my full rest day. And then previous to that will be like short little swims, short little bikes, short little runs. That's how I would work backwards and how I program for most of my athletes. Try and get the rest day overwards. You don't want to have a rest day before your race. You'll feel quite stale.
Yeah.
But that's my own experience, but it's how a lot of other people program as well.
Okay. Yeah. One thing I'd noticed, so I felt like my muscles were soft.
Yeah.
That's just the feeling. I know physiologically it's not what's happened, but the feeling of being like, there was almost like when I needed to kick, it just wasn't there.
Yeah.
You know, like everything just felt like...
Just a bit slumped.
Sludge.
But it's just probably the few wee days. No, it wouldn't have made that much difference to your overall time. I think it's probably a bit more in your mindset as well, but I think it would be better to have a bit more short sessions in there.
Okay.
And race week, you don't have to do a lot. Yeah. It is so the pillars of race week will be hydration, sleep, and those short little sessions. Okay. Those are the three things to definitely work on. Another thing I thought would be cool to introduce is, so the night before a race, a lot of people don't sleep well. Like you're thinking about the race, especially about an Ironman, you're up really early. So what I try and do is, some people disagree with this, I try and make sure the earlier part of the week I'm really anal about my sleep, because you can still have a really good race on no sleep. Like I've had PBs where I barely slept the night before. So don't think having a bad night's sleep is a death wish, or to your race. You can still have a good race, but try and work backwards and really front load your sleep if you can, if that's possible, if you don't have kids or anything.
It makes sense.
But that's kind of what I worked. So I am well enough rested even before.
Okay. So you're actually looking at your race week the same way that you would look at essentially your hours of training would be the same mindset for your hours of sleep. Yeah. So if you could compoundly...
I think that's a good approach, definitely, because I know people who've barely slept the night before their Ironmans and they've done great races. Yeah. So the reason I'm saying that is some people get in this worry mindset that, I haven't slept well, I'm going to have a crap race.
I need to get my 9 hours, so I'm going to go to bed at 6 p.m.
You're probably going to be nervous, a bit of anxiety. Yeah. So the
stress levels are high.
So you can't really, it's probably nothing really you can do. But even professional athletes are the same. They can't. You're up so early for the Ironman. Yeah. Realistically, you're going to have a few hours sleep and then it's time to go. But try and just have a priority of sleep, hydration, and eating well, plenty of carbs before.
For sure. That's sound advice, and I definitely agree with you. In terms of BMC and your the company that you're running, people can reach out to you on Instagram.
We're trying to grow YouTube, but I'm a one-man band, so it's opened my eyes to the level of editing and stuff people do. But yeah, mostly on Instagram, website, and people can contact me there.
Okay, great. Barney, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. And for the listeners out there, we've got a nice group how many of us are going to Bahrain?
There's going to be 10 of us going.
10? Yeah. 10 of us going, so... For those that want to dabble in, it's not just endurance sport, right? So running, swimming, cycling.
I'm coaching a girl currently for a sportif, so it's not even a competition. It's just a big group ride. Okay. Some people training for the first 5K. They're literally doing a couch to 5K program. So I do coach currently at all levels. Yeah. Okay, great. So not just triathlon sports. And then have you done any work with... say like corporate company, like corporate wellnesses and things like that? No, that's a space that would be good to get into. I know some of the guys work in bigger companies and they're trying to get their own triathlon team for the company and stuff. So that's an area that I might be getting involved in soon. Okay.
All right. Great, man. So Instagram, Facebook.
I don't have. I'm low on the Facebook. Okay. I have one, but it's quite low.
Okay. Instagram and YouTube, and they can just reach out to you directly through socials.
Yeah. Perfect.
All right.
No
amazing.
Thanks, you so much.
Man. It's been